Hey everyone, this is Brian Holmes with the Strategic Living Podcast and BrianHolmes.com. You're listening to my great friend Stephanie O'Brien, and you are about to be moved by purpose.
The pieces of the puzzle fit together if we keep looking back on those things and saying, what was it then that I was doing that benefits me today?
Are you longing to know what your purpose is? Are you on the wrong career path? Do you feel like there must be more to life? Don't worry, there's hope. It's time to be moved by purpose. Now your host, Stephanie O'Brien.
You are listening to the Moved by Purpose podcast. It is your host, Stephanie O'Brien. I am thrilled to be with you today. Today's guest is Dr. Bob Roush. For more than 30 years, Dr. Bob Roush has had the privilege of counseling and coaching individuals in the U.S., Canada, and Europe. Presently, he is a registered corporate coach and a certified executive coach. Bob is a senior consultant with Berkman International and a founding member of John Maxwell Coach, trainer, and speaker program. Through Dr. Bob's education, experience, and instinctive ability, he delivers a unique opportunity for leaders to make significant improvements in their professional and personal lives. Without any further delay, you are in for a treat with this interview with Dr. Bob Roush. Welcome to the show, Bob. It's such an honor to have you on today.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. It's an honor to be here.
So I love this question because this is where you allow me and the listeners to really get to know you. I'd love to know what events in your life were or what your journey has been that has led you to doing what you do today.
Okay. When I got out of the Air Force, many years ago, I thought I wanted to go into the ministry and did the preparation for all of that. And then when I got on a church staff, then I figured that wasn't going to be for me. I was afraid I was going to hurt somebody. To tell you the truth, it was very frustrating. It was just very frustrating, and so I decided I was going to go back to school and get my master's in psychology and also my PhD, which I did. So I have a PhD in clinical psychology. And I started a clinic. I founded a clinic in Shreveport, Louisiana called Family Therapy Center. And I did, for 15 years, I clocked up about 35,000 hours of doing counseling with a variety of people. Interestingly enough, a lot of the people that I did counseling with were men. And so when I got into my present business, that being executive coaching, I'm working an awful lot with guys in the C-suite, in the CEOs, CFOs, COOs, and that higher level leadership. But anyway, when I was practicing, I ended up getting extremely frustrated and really burned out. Just the things that were happening in the field. And because I am an entrepreneur, when your psychologist is an entrepreneur, the psychologist gets a little antsy. It's kind of like, are you going to get better now?
Yeah.
And I would, so I was really burning a lot of energy. So one night, this is my pivotal point in my life, in my career. One night I stayed in my office late and I was actually praying. And I was saying, look, I got to find out something different here. I got to do something different because they're not getting any better, meaning my patients. I'm getting worse. And so something has to happen. And kind of the notion that I got, Stephanie, was these people are out of energy. And so the next morning, I just thought, well, the simple things are generally the best. But sooner than later, I began to understand that we have this human energy that drives us. It drives our mental, emotional, and physical being. It takes energy to think positively. It takes energy to think negatively. And so I started really interviewing physicists, biologists, religious leaders, all kinds of disciplines to find out what they knew about this physical energy. And actually, the physicists helped me the most. And as a result of that, I connected this physical energy or this energy in our body to performance. And I left my practice. I started doing speaking engagements and started working with leadership teams and started a pharmaceutical company. A small pharmaceutical company was my first client. So that's kind of how I, the transition from wanting to be a minister to getting into executive coaching.
See, I love these stories because more times than not, there's a bunch of seemingly random pieces to people's journey, and you're wondering how this is going to look as a completed puzzle, like what this picture is going to look like. How does that connect to this? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people get fixated on and kind of get stuck. I think where they're stuck is that they think it all has to clearly connect, or they're doing something, but what they really want to do and what they're doing now, they have no idea how in the world those connect. And there's a lot of pivoting involved in life.
Right.
And for me, the connection isn't always clear before you get there. Right. It's like the connection is more of something that gets revealed on the journey as you go or in retrospect. Mm-hmm. So my background in social work, there were a lot of things that I had to do that I just was not a fan of, regarding like extensive paperwork and note keeping and documenting everything. And those were the things that burned me out. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, though, whenever I am making phone calls to associations, to book speaking gigs and things like that, look what I'm pulling out of my pocket. What was said on what day, when to follow up, all that note keeping and documentation actually ends up being a benefit to what I'm doing today. Mm-hmm. So the very thing that I couldn't stand then is the thing that's helping me stay organized and fueling me forward now.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Absolutely. No, I hear what you're saying, and it is absolutely the same with my life. One of the things that burned me out the most in my practice was managed care. When managed care first came on the scene, and everything changed. Prior to that, it was just wonderful. That when managed care came on the scene and I had to answer to somebody in another part of the state, and I had to keep, as you said, these meticulous notes and all of that stuff, I thought, this is not me. It is not really who I am, but I do what I remember. It's not necessarily the note-taking, but what I remember are the stories. The stories of the people that I counseled, and having a doctorate in clinical psychology has really helped me in terms of working with leadership. Let's say this tongue-in-cheek, I guess, but most leaders need a psychologist or a social worker anyway. They all have incredible stress and anxiety and all that stuff, not all of them, but many of them. It is interesting that the pieces of the puzzle fit together if we keep looking back on those things and saying, what was it then that I was doing that benefits me today? And I don't know what the future holds. I'm kind of like maybe a lot of entrepreneurs. I'm taking the day as it comes, and I just don't. Mm-hmm. I don't know the future necessarily. So it's been kind of interesting, and I kind of throw myself in the same category as a lot of entrepreneurs who get excited about it today, get excited about a topic, get excited about touching the lives of people, which I certainly do all of those. And I'm going to just do that every morning when I wake up and do it till I go to bed at night. Detail is not my strong suit, but, you can hire people to do detail.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So,
which I do.
Yep.
Yep, because that stuff seems to really drain me, and I don't perform at my best when I'm doing a bunch of stuff that is not where my strengths are. And some people feel like that argument is a little controversial. And I've even spoke about this to pastors at churches where I talk about, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the DISC.
Yes, I am.
Personality
Yep,
too? Okay. Yep. And I'll talk to them about the DISC and how they can use that tool to help place the congregation in appropriate volunteer roles. Mm-hmm. So they're like thriving the most in an area that they're strong at, something that comes natural to them. Because if they're placed in something that feels like a chore or a drag, they're most likely not actually going to follow through with it or show up. Mm-hmm. And some pastors have raised the objection that they're like, yeah, but I don't want people to say like, oh, that's not my strength, and then they're refusing to stretch or to grow, or they're using that as a justification to not try to improve at all because they're only sticking where they're strong. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of an objection that they have.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm curious to hear what your thought is on that and what you would say if that objection was raised.
Yeah, I use the Berkman. The Berkman tool is, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a great tool in fact, it's the only one I use for leadership, although I'm very familiar with the others, with the DISC and the Myers-Briggs and all that. One of the things that I say to people when they do a profile is, you're the person who filled this out. So if there's something wrong with it, then you marked the areas that you felt like fit you best. So this is a picture of your personality, your behaviors. Now, the other thing that I say pretty quickly after I interpret and go through the Berkman is, now that we know your profile, you got to get over yourself. Yeah, it's kind of like, people do that. They say, well, I'm a D in the DISC. I'm a D and an I. Well, good. It's good that you know that. Or in the Berkman, I have these behaviors. And it's great that you know that. But you have to get over yourself, because the reason you really find out about you is so you can touch the lives of other people. So then it gets to be in reference to getting to be able to, as quickly as possible, read other people and see what their particular needs are, behavioral needs are. But that's the way I get past it. A lot of people will take their favorite behavior, whether it's a D and an S or D, a C or D, whatever, and they will they wear it like a badge. Mm. And the real issue is that, as I said, the real issue is getting past that, getting over ourselves so that we touch the lives of other people.
Very, very good. And I just did a training on this yesterday, and I said the same thing. Like, the people that know this and now have the awareness of, okay, this is how your natural tendencies are, that's not for you to stick something in the sand and say, this is how I am, and now you have to deal with this about me. It's more for you to understand how you're wired and sure what your natural preferences are, but then you begin to learn how to read other people, mm-hmm. and then you can adjust and serve them to communicate to their needs. Because the person with the knowledge is the one responsible for basically ministering to other people and accommodating to that. Just because you're a D and you're a direct, well, if you're working with that S style, that directness isn't going to get through to the S style. So you got to adjust.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. Years ago, I wrote up, we have 5 boys, and when my kids were little, I wrote it was a book. It ended up being more of a pamphlet workbook thing. And it was called Creative Discipline. And you're describing what I think is really important, and that is that everybody comes onto the planet with particular behavioral needs. We need to discover what those needs are. And for example, you may have experienced this because you told me that you're going to launch an e-learning course here pretty soon. And I have one that's going to be launched called Energy Overcoming Anxiety. And what I realized, Stephanie, is if I stay in front of this computer too long, then I start getting squirrely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I start losing my energy. So because I get my energy by doing my natural behaviors. And my natural behaviors is to do this, talk with people, find out what's going on, how I can help people grow and develop and all of that. If I stay isolated too long, then my energy level starts dropping and I'm more receptive to having anxiety or issues like that. So oftentimes my wife will tell me, you need to get out of the office. You need to get out and, start seeing people in the Dallas area, that kind of thing.
Okay. I was going to just bounce off of you. And I noticed that when I transitioned to working in the business right now with my full focus, where, I'm not working around a day job, I have a remote team and I work from my home office. And I remember just really missing people.
Yeah.
And I started just kind of feeling drained and like I didn't have any energy to create, and I was like, this is not good because I built this business, creating this life that I want, and I'm like, oh my goodness,
yeah,
I feel lonely. And so then I had to start strategizing, okay, when I can, because my clients some of them are local, but I'll have clients from California or Washington, all over. So those are phone appointments, and the phone calls still help. And I just had to start getting strategic, which is why I started the podcast and interviewing people. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I need to build relationships with people a couple times a week. So I'll network on Thursdays, and then I have my interviews on Wednesdays, and I make sure I am intentional about that human interaction that I have. Now, it's not always local, but it still helps. It's still better than just through email or chatting through a Skype chat.
Oh, so. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that's why I say even in these interviews like you're doing with me I will be so pumped when we get finished, I'll have to get myself off the ceiling because I love it. I really love it. The other thing that happens is that in my mind anyway, there are three basic behaviors that are really positive qualities, and that is performance, responsibility, and pleasing people. We want to do all three of those things. And what I've discovered is if I don't watch my energy level and I start getting low on energy, those three positive behaviors end up being under stress. They end up being negative behaviors. For example, I say, okay, I need to be responsible to get this program done or to write this book or whatever else. And then I start neglecting my need for people or whatever. Well, then as I get more stressed about getting it done, that needing to perform ends up, I need to prove to myself that I can get it done. I need to prove myself. And the responsibility kind of thing is really, really a great quality. But if I don't take a break and refuel my energy, sharpen the sword, do the things that really give me more energy, then that responsibility gets to be hyper responsibility where I'm putting too much pressure on myself for everything. It's not only getting a book done or a course done. It ends up being a negative where all of a sudden I feel responsible to, I'm not being with my family enough. I'm not taking care of my children enough or my wife, all of that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know if you experience that or not.
I do. I do very much. And I have to retrain my thought pattern because the over responsibility thing can really be very destructive.
Absolutely.
And counterproductive. You feel like, I got to lock down and focus and stop at nothing because your effort, at least my mentality is, I'm being productive. It is extremely counterproductive because I become a mess because I feel like, and sometimes at the end of the day, instead of feeling productive, because I will produce a lot, I end up feeling like a total failure because I focused on all these other things that are falling apart and not getting looked at or other areas.
Exactly. And ultimately, and this is what I found really it's the reason why I did this first course, Energy Overcoming Anxiety, is that ultimately ends up resulting in anxiety. In other words, now I feel anxious. Am I going to get it done in time? Some people even have panic attacks or generalized anxiety, and they feel edgy and, or sense of depression, I'm not accomplishing what I need to accomplish. And that really does get to be a real negative approach to life. And then we start burning our energy on that kind of stuff. I have a client, for example, a guy who's 34 years old, and he loves his job. He's the president of a company. It's a $22 million company. It's not big, but it's a great little company. And he got into this really focused, nose to the grindstone, really focused on making this company successful. But he stopped using his energy effectively. He stopped doing things that would refuel his energy. And as a result of that, one day he had this massive anxiety attack. And the anxiety attack came because he took a very normal behavior responsibility. He ended up stressing himself so badly that it ended up being a negative. I have to be responsible for everything, and and our emotions have to come out some way. I mean, that as a mental health professional. I mean, they have to come out. And where it came out with him was in anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Taking the time to get away from it all, to really rest, to do something else, plant a flower or do something else besides just working. Now, entrepreneurs are notoriously bad at stopping because they love what they do. The danger, I think, of a lot of entrepreneurial people is that they love what they do.
Yeah, which you're like, how is that a danger? That's what I'm working towards, is to get in alignment with my purpose, because that's where I know I'll be fulfilled. And from there, there's energy that flows, and I know that I'll love what I'll do. And that's because it's better to love what you do than to dread what you do every day.
Yeah, unless you do too much of it.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, me too, a bunch of times. And and I think because we do love what we do, I mean, it's like the statistics you mentioned working with some pastors. The statistics for pastor burnout are just astronomical.
Mm-hmm. Very high.
I mean, extremely high. And a lot of it is because they want to help people. They want to be responsible to what is God's calling for them. And they want to perform. But what happens over time is they, as you well know, they get into this extreme stress, and then they have to find some way to release the stress. And many of them have anxiety attacks. Many of them get angry with their family. Many of them do these behaviors that aren't necessarily appropriate because they love what they do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they don't stop.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing, because I have a couple good friends that are pastors, and I think one is at a church that really focuses on balance and taking care of yourself and not overworking. Uh-huh. The other one, and ironically, one is at a mega church. And so you think the mega church would have them maybe overworked, but the mega church has them really resting, taking Sabbath, taking vacations, time to rest, not working all hours of the day. And I think they even, if they sense you're working too much, they will call you on that. So there's accountability with it.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and I think that could be one of the reasons why it's such a growing, successful church. The other one is a small little congregation that's really, really struggling. And those pastors are 24/7. They're working all the time and answering to every single call. They don't take time off. They're not even allowed to have more than like a day. They have to work every single weekend, and they're working Monday through Friday. They're also having to work Saturday and Sunday, and I'm like, oh my,
oh yeah,
this is a mess.
Yeah, it's a setup for failure. I mean, it is a setup. Yeah. Because again, we all have, I think, I call it this threshold of energy. If you can visualize a tank, a fuel tank of some sort, in our human energy, we have this outgo. I mean, we're doing this, we're helping people, and we feel good about helping people. But all of a sudden, because we haven't taken time to refuel that, and there's like millions of ways to refuel your energy. We haven't taken time to refuel that, and people hit that threshold. Every person I've ever seen in counseling and every person I've ever seen in my executive coaching has a predisposed behavior. In other words, the same behavior happens every single time. For example, for me, when I get low on energy, then I start withdrawing from people. Now remember, people, that's what I love, but I start withdrawing from people, and then I start getting anxious, start worrying about things. I know when I'm there that I've hit the threshold and I need to refuel my energy. I need to go. So there's these, it's like this warning light on your automobile, the dashboard. And when we see that light come on, or we know it's coming on in our life, we need to really stop and think about our energy and what we need to do to refuel it.
So can I ask you, if you don't mind, like when you notice the signs that that's your warning light, what are the things that you've learned to do to refuel it?
One of the things is that typically I work out, and I've always worked out. I learned to do it in the Air Force, and I've done it for years and years and years. But what I find is when I get stressed, I stop doing the things that are good for me.
Yep.
And one of them is working out. So I will make it a point to get up a little early, or I'll put it on my calendar. I have to put it on my calendar. And I will either work out early in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, or I'll work out at 3:30 in the afternoon. But I'll take that hour and I'll go work out. The other thing is that, we all take pride in the books we read and yada, 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 all that stuff. But I'll find books to read that have nothing to do with business, just stories about, I love biographies. I read the Steve Jobs biography, just things that will physically increase my energy. And I tell you what really physically increases my energy is going somewhere where I can be by myself, having some alone time. But physically, mentally, emotionally, those three areas, spiritually too, but those three areas, I'll find things that I can do. I'll read a biography. I'll start working out more. Ginger and I do really well when we're driving around and we're talking. I'll spend more time doing that with her. But just doing some things outside of work, dragging myself away from my desk.
Yep. I'm grateful that I'm in touch with that, and maybe because I just I practice what I preach, so to speak. Like with clients, I don't ever expect them to do something I haven't applied in my own life. Mm-hmm. So one of those things is if I'm noticing something's a little off, I will pay attention to those signs of, okay, what's really going on here and what do I need? And sometimes physical exercise is definitely important. Paying attention to what I'm eating is also important, and having the discipline. So it's kind of funny. I know something's off when I naturally want to eat healthy and go after the foods that make my body feel its best. Mm-hmm. So the vegetables and the salads and the whole foods, all of that. But when I'm like, why am I suddenly craving the French fries and the fried food and the chocolate, and I'm going after that, and then it's worse. And if I indulge in that, then it's worse, and it's a downward spiral. You know, when that temptation comes, usually, and that's one of my triggers. If I'm craving the bad foods, I'm like, okay, that's not normal, because I know my body doesn't thrive off of that. And that, for me, I think, is that anxiety or that need to comfort. I'll go for that comfort.
That's
food.
right.
And so the dieting, for me, is a big thing with mood and energy, and really paying attention to when those hunger signals kick, that there's a reason why I'm going after it.
Right.
And I need to really get to the bottom of it. So walks, getting fresh air, just taking deep breaths.
Yep.
Like the breath is so powerful. And I'm like, okay, I just need to slow down, sit outside, get some sunshine, even if it's chilly, just a little exposure to the sun, and just take in the cool, fresh air and things like that, to just disconnect and recharge and settle down and calm down.
Absolutely.
And those things I'll do. When I notice I'm getting angst throughout the day, I'm like, time to walk away from the very thing that I think I need to keep doing.
Right.
It's time to take a break.
Yeah, it's your threshold. You've just nailed your threshold behaviors, and that's exactly right. When you're after French fries and chocolate, then you have hit your threshold behavior. Some people use alcohol. Some people, I have one client who uses drugs. I mean, there's just a number of things, because, as you said, comfort food, but the alcohol or the drugs or whatever, and particularly with men, because men tend to be, I think, a little more addictive to that kind of stuff than women. And that may not be accurate. It's just a statistic that I read. But what it does is just numbs the mind. So I'm not thinking about all the things that I got to deal with. And, I mean, ultimately it comes back. But the idea is that we pay attention to getting the symptom relief, but not really getting the energy back to where it needs to be, or at a high level. And I think particularly like your writing and my writing, I'm not a natural writer. I'm a natural speaker, but I'm not a natural writer.
Me too.
And so I have to be really, really careful that when I'm writing, that I don't spend too much time on a particular thing, because then everything starts crowding together. And as I said, one of my threshold behaviors is anxiety. The stat says that 1 in 4 people are going to have some form of anxiety in their life. And I happen to be one of those 4. But that's the indication that there's something amiss, like you said. And so I'll plug in my refuelers. I can't look at it as like it's a discipline. For some reason it is, but I have to look at it like I'm going to the filling station. Now, in my mind, it's a trick, I guess. But in my mind, when I say that, then it's like, it makes more sense to me than I've got to make myself go do something.
Yes.
It's kind of like, wait a minute, I'm going to run out of gas if I don't stop by the filling station and put gas in my car. I'm going to run out of fuel if I don't, go to the gym. Or in your case, and me too, if I don't eat right, that kind of thing. So.
Yep. But and exercise is also something I do regularly. My body feels that when it doesn't exercise, I physically start getting anxious. It's like, I need to move.
Yep. The interesting thing to me is that it affects, when we don't take time to refuel our energy, it really does affect our purpose. No matter how strong your purpose is, or how strong my purpose is, my purpose will be, I'll put it on the sidelines when my energy level is lower. In other words, like I said earlier, love being with people, love to get to know people and talk to them, get their stories and all that. But then when I get on that threshold, then I want to get away from them. And my purpose is to be with people. And so if people want to destroy their purpose, the best thing to do is never refuel your energy.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it works that way. It's just wild.
Mm-hmm. You become very ineffective. I remember last year, it was, around Easter last year, I kept striving and working harder, and I have to get this off the ground, and this has to be successful, and I got so hyper-focused on that I just depleted myself. I got totally burned out, and then that really upset me, because I'm like, I'm supposed to love this, and now I'm so depleted. I don't have anything left to give. And so a mentor of mine, she's like, all right, you need to give yourself an entire week of just do not do anything with the business.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, I can't do that. Who's going to run this and do that? And what? And she's like, look, it's going to be there when you get back.
Right.
It's not going to go anywhere. And she's like, and I'm talking like, you've got to do the best you can to get your mind off of it. Just because you're not sitting at a computer, I mean, you got to shut your mind off from it.
Yep.
Like unplug mentally. I'm telling you, the first 1 or 2 days, I was saying, I feel like I'm having withdrawal symptoms. I don't think I have given myself time to not think or talk or brainstorm about the business since I started 2 years ago. And so my brain got so accustomed to always being on, I'm like, I did not know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't pleasant. It was really funny. I'm like, wow, I think I got really addicted almost to the business, getting it going and moving. And so that week was wonderful, because since then I know how to unplug.
Yeah.
I purposely give myself at least 1 day a week where I am not thinking or talking or working or doing anything with the business.
Good for you.
So if that
Good for
so
you.
if that means I have to go on Pinterest, which is kind of my thing of just whatever, go daydream about something else, learn a new skill. Lately I've been learning kind of on a craft kick. I was like, just get my mind busy on something else, and it's actually re-energizing me, because I'm now activating my brain to think differently, creatively, but in a different capacity, I guess.
Absolutely. That you made me think of something. I started learning Spanish. We live I call it the compound. We live in a neighborhood where there's people take care of the lawns and all that kind of stuff. And so one day I decided that I was going to learn Spanish, and I started talking to one of these guys that does the maintenance and stuff. And so I started learning some words, and 2 months later I'd learned a good bit of it. And I was out somewhere, and I talked to a lady who was Mexican, and I made a statement, and she looked at me and she said, I don't understand that. Well, what I found out was the guy that I'd been learning Spanish from had a speech impediment. So I'm learning Spanish from a speech impeded
Oh,
guy.
my goodness.
Great fella. But, you are absolutely right. I mean, the idea of being doing something like a garden or learning another language or whatever else. I can tell you, you described perfectly these three behaviors that I mentioned earlier: performance, responsibility, and the other one is pleasing people. Because under pressure, when we get too much stress, we don't want to please people, we become people pleasers. And that really leads to a great deal of anxiety. So what you described is right. I mean, we get panicky. We feel like, I got to get this done. I got to make it happen. And we create this anxiety, and our adrenaline, adrenaline doesn't know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden we have a panic attack, and we're wondering, where did that come from? Well, it came from the thing I love doing.
Right.
Or it could come from that. It could come from a lot of things.
Right.
But it's interesting. It's fascinating. Human nature, as you well know, it just blows my mind. I love people. I love to hear their stories.
So how can people connect more with you, learn more about, they're like, man, I find this, and I'd like to get better with really understanding my threshold and learning how to maybe redirect it and navigate around that. How can they connect with you?
Well, we got about 1 million blogs. Just Google. One thing is just Google Energy Driven Leader or Dr. Bob Rausch. Google that. Either of those. The website, of course, is energydrivenleader.com. And my email address, which I love to get, I do really love to get emails, Dr. Bob, DRBOB, at energydrivenleader.com. But those would be the ways to get in touch with me.
Perfect. All right. Bob, it was a pleasure to talk with you. I could interview you for a whole other hour, but we do got to wrap this up. Thank you for conversation because it energizes me and helps me carry on throughout the day. I hope you've been energized as well. And thank you for blessing us with your wisdom and expertise.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. And listen, good fortune and blessings with your course, your new course that's coming out pretty soon, and your book and all that you're doing. Take care. Thank you for letting me be here. Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye. One of the things that I say to people when they do a profile is, you're the person who filled this out. So if there's something wrong with it, then you marked the areas that you felt like fit you best. So this is a picture of your personality, your behaviors. Now, the other thing that I say pretty quickly after I interpret and go through the Birkman is, now that we know your profile, you got to get over yourself.
There you have it. That was the Dr. Bob Rausch over at Energy Driven Leader. Make sure you connect with him, reach out to him, check out one of his courses. I know Dr. Bob had mentioned his course and as well as my course, and I don't even know if I talked about my course yet. I am recreating the Mindset Mastery seminar that I did into an online course. And this is where you can really break free of limiting beliefs, conquer the barriers that have held you back from achieving the success you desire most to see in your life. This is for the person who continuously sets out to do something to only get snapped right back again and again and again. This will get to the bottom of what that is. Maybe uncover some lies you're believing, some fears that you need to face head on and finally overcome and conquer once and for all, so that you can live the abundant life that you are meant to live. This is available for pre-order for $49. This course is going to be on sale, will be available for probably $4.97. So I'm practically giving this course away. This course is finished. In all transparency, we're just trying to put it on a course platform and it will be ready. Due to technical difficulties, which hopefully will be worked out, we shall have this rolled out in the next couple weeks if all goes well, which is why you're getting it practically for free, because you'll just have to wait a little bit until it's ready. If you want this course, please email me. You have to email me because it's not even in the store yet, and I will send you a link to purchase it, and you will be the first to get the course. You got to email me at movedbypurpose.net, fill out the contact form, or you can email me at stephanie@movedbypurpose.net, or you can email me at movedbypurpose@gmail.com. Either way, I get all of them. They're all routed to me. Make sure that you are emailing me within the next 2 weeks by the end of April, or you will lose your window for this opportunity that will not come again. So I'm going to be bold and say that it's not going to come at this price again. You better act now or you will miss out on the low price. The lowest it's going to go next is $197. So you have $49, or you can spend $197 because you took too long to make a decision and to act. So stop holding yourself back and get ordering so you can be the first to get in on Mindset Mastery. And I'll talk to all of you guys next week.